Hi, I'm James Brookes, and welcome to From the Factory Floor, a conversational podcast about all things startup and tech, brought to you by the folks at Thestartupfactory.tech.
And welcome back to another episode of From the Factory Floor. I'm your host James, and as ever, joined by my co-host Nairi. How are you doing, Nairi?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. It's been a good, busy week here at TSF, so don't think I can really complain too much.
Oh, good.
And then we're also very kindly joined by Sam from So Squared. Hi, Sam.
Hi, James. How are we doing? Pleasure to be
Very
with
well.
you this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. How are things over at So Squared at the moment?
Things are well. Got some exciting new products that are about to launch. Spent a lot of last year iterating, building, listening to customers, and building on that. We are now in alpha testing, closed beta in about 2 weeks. So very exciting times for us.
Very exciting indeed. So I think, Sam, just for the folks out there, it'd be great just for you to give a little bit of an introduction to yourself and to what So Squared is and sort of the journey you've had so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sam Royle. I'm the co-founder and CEO of So Squared. So Squared is a influencer marketing platform and content marketplace. We provide scalable infrastructure to businesses to participate in the influencer and content marketing space, but also at the same time give the tools to creators to accelerate their careers. As a business, we're a two-sided marketplace. Core functionality of the marketplace is an advanced identification system, so using both user-generated information and proprietary campaign data to search, refine, and filter, end-to-end CRM system to keep alignment throughout the whole collaboration process, direct comms channel, making sure there's visibility between both parties throughout that collaboration process. And then, as I just said before, we have a new product launching, or a whole new product launching. But the two new features that are incorporated into that product are a integrated wallet system, giving third-party security for both sides of the transaction, and then also an automated report writing system looking at things like creator and brand sentiment analysis, creator behavior analysis, and also campaign performance data.
Amazing. I mean, the sort of whole UGC space has been something that's, a lot of people have struggled to actually make the most of. So it's great to see a business like yourselves, and because you and your co-founder have obviously managed to set this up from the ground up to get to where you are today. What was the real starting point for you guys? So what actually gave you the idea to approach this space?
So my background is like very traditional corporate world. So I used a lot of tools, systems, whether it was identification systems, CRMs, analytics tools, comms channels, like basically everything that's incorporated into the So Squared platform. What we saw was an opportunity. Now, I'm not a media guy by trade. Like I'm more of a commercial person. Background was consulting, predominantly in the private market investment space. So I saw a really big opportunity in an industry which was extremely infant. So influencer marketing, full stop, has kind of basically been around since 2015, 2016, and has now become such a prominent part of everybody's marketing activities. About 90% of marketers are using it. And content marketing has become even more prominent with the rise of UGC. Things like TikTok have completely obliterated consumer attention. So short form video content is so important to all businesses to get eyeballs onto their products and services. The problem is that with all infant industries, there typically tends to become a lack of infrastructure. So the commercial angle here was to apply a professional approach or professionalize the industry so that businesses could transact in a more efficient way. As we continue to grow as a business, my interests focus moved away more from just the commercial angle of, oh, there's a really good opportunity here to make some money, into the fact that I became pretty obsessed with marketplaces, full stop. So network effects within marketplaces, obviously being the defendable moat within these products. And then also consumer behavior, why we purchase things, like what leads us to purchase things, and how can we basically influence that as businesses, or more, if we're being more precise, as marketers.
Fab, thanks, Sam. I was just smiling then because you made me feel really old because I did my dissertation at uni on consumer behaviour, like why we buy. But I was laughing to myself because in that time there was like there was no social media. So when you bought, really, you basically bought from a shop. So I was just thinking about like how in my head I still think I'm 21, but like how dated my dissertation would be, because the way we buy now is completely different. One of the things I wanted to ask you was like having an itch to scratch. So you become obsessed with something, you've got this idea, you've obviously got this sort of corporate background. What was the tipping point to making the leap into becoming a startup founder and actually turning this into a business and essentially your life? Because there's not really any different, is there, when you're running a startup?
No, I mean, I was very fortunate, which I appreciate. Not all startup founders are fortunate. I was in a very good job. I was able to self-fund my project, so bootstrapping for the throughout mainly COVID. So basically, I'm a non-technical founder. As a product, we are built on a no-code, low-code solution called Bubble. It allowed us to basically get our initial MVP to market in a relatively, I'd say, a relatively cost-effective way, but don't get me wrong, it still cost me a
Yeah.
fortune. But I had the ability to self-fund our project whilst I was working full-time with freelance developers, of which Greg, my co-founder, was originally a freelance developer that that I was working with, and then we built such a strong relationship, and he became my co-founder and CTO. But I think the leap of faith kind of comes from having real conviction in your idea and the opportunity. And one of the biggest kind of blockers, and I do quite a lot of mentoring in the sort of startup ecosystem, is that what startups actually need more than anything, they don't need cash, they need time, and they actually need the founders like actual time in the business. And it's taking that leap of faith to basically quit whatever you're doing and just have that conviction to go into your business. And it's the time of the founder that helps the business go from 0 to 10.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, I know from a TSF point of view, we always insist that the startups that we work with give a significant time commitment, and we've seen it not work when they've continued to try and balance being a startup founder on a Tuesday with a full-time job. There has to come a point where you're doing that, but it is chicken and egg because a lot of people do rely on that salary. Just going back to the working with Greg and being a co-founder and using Bubble. So am I right in thinking Greg was the one that was doing the more technical build side of things?
Yeah, correct. I mean, so initially when we went out to market, or when I had the idea, I was looking at full stack developers, speaking to a lot of freelancers through your traditional places like Upwork. And to be honest with you, the jargon that was used when they were quoting, when they were presenting, just made it really unattractive to me. I just didn't want to participate in it. As a non-technical founder, like very commercial, understand tech from a commercial perspective, but from an actual build, it just made it really difficult for me to even get engaged. A friend of mine told me about these low-code, no-code solutions, Bubble being kind of sort of the leader in that space. I first tried my hand at it, was like, okay, I could learn this, I could dedicate a lot of time to it. Is it my skill set? No, it's not. I'm a sales go-to-market guy through and through, right? So actually, where does the value lie here in terms of me spending my time and energy learning to be more technical, or actually employing people to be more technical? Now, I ended up cycling through a lot of developers before I found Greg and wasted a lot of money. One of the kind of biggest problems that I will say with the no code, low code space is because it's not full stack engineering where most people go and do a computer science degree or they'll have proper formal training. There are a lot of hobbyists on it. So there are a lot of people that will just tinker in it. They can make things look okay, but on the front end they look fine. But the back end, the way that it's structured in terms of the workflows, the logic behind it, it's just not even built for scale, and will just literally all come crumbling down. So I would say like a little bit of a warning to anybody listening to this who is not technical and is looking to potentially go down the low code, no code route, is just be very conscious that there are a lot of, I'll say, quote unquote, amateur builders out there.
Yeah, 100%. It's something we've we've seen, and it's the growth of things like Adalo, Bubble. Like I say, people can pick this up. It's something that we've started using a little bit to be able to just very quickly iterate. And if you're going to start using hobbyists, like you said, Sam, you might as well do a little bit of it yourself to be able to show people, but then get someone to do it properly in whichever tool you want to use, to then spend your time in and on the business, whether it's doing sales.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing, Sam, we were sort of not laughing about it because I think it's great, but you're still on Bubble, aren't you? And you're sort of further on in your journey, but that's probably testament to the fact that you had Greg and you built it at the front end and the back end in a scalable way rather than, through, because I think there's a lot of throwaway comments at the moment in the startup world. Just build something on Bubble and it'll take you a week. It costs £200 and it's done, and you can acquire, you become a fundable business from that perspective. And actually what you're saying is it still took quite a lot of work and expense to get that right on that platform for you.
Trust me, you will not build something in a week for £200.
Thank you.
But fundamentally, you will not. Unless if you want to go buy a Squarespace template and have a landing page, yeah, probably £200, no stress, right? But if you look at like our product, and we're really candid about this, like we've got a pretty complicated product. We're a Meta API partner, so we have a full integration into Meta with a load of data coming in and out through their API. We're API connected into Stripe through multiple different subscription packages, but also through a wallet feature, which includes an escrow. We do data analytics through our platform. Like we spent, I won't say how much, but a lot of money on building out tech. The reason that we've stuck with Bubble though and not moved to a fully engineered solution, and that's not to say that we might go to like a full stack solution in the future, is because effectively we've recently rebuilt our platform, which we brought in sort of an expert team. So we brought in a database architecture who had basically had 20 years of full stack coding experience, but has moved to the no code space or the low code space just because it's so quick. When you come from proper traditional coding background and you move into the no code low code space, you see a lot of people making this transition because they think like engineers, they act like engineers, they test like engineers, and they can just move so much more quickly through the process. So our new tech stack basically is effectively, it still uses Bubble, but we use a completely separate database. So we're on Xano with a full new database architecture. So all the database is off Bubble as a thing. We effectively use Bubble as a front end, and it all comes through. In terms of like where we're at as a product now, like we have over 2,000 creators on our platform. We've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world. We have sort of our weekly active users is at like 65% of those 2,000. So there's a lot of activity happening on the platform. Last year alone, we completed 3,000 collaborations through the old So Squared platform, and that one was a combination of some great stuff, but some terrible stuff. And that's just because we had built on legacy developer work that wasn't great. And now we decided, you know what? It's time to rebuild the whole thing for proper scalability and as we really become a more mature business.
Fab. Thank you. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was in that early stage process when you were building for an MVP, you've talked about the fact that your skills was around sales and go-to-market. What was your go-to-market strategy, and when did you start to sell, and how did you sell something that was an MVP or wasn't quite ready yet?
I think one of the best quote in the world that everybody, most people in the ecosystem or tech ecosystem or startup ecosystem will know is Reid Hoffman's like, if you're not embarrassed by your first product launch, you've launched too late. Like that is a real issue, especially if like as a founder, you're a product person. And even if you're a salesperson, because you might have been in a sales role where you were selling Snowflake or HubSpot or whatever you were selling, where it's a finished product. At the end of the day, like the first product that you launch will be shit, right? So will the second, so will the third, so will the fourth, and probably up to like the 10th. But I think there's a bit of magic that happens in basically startups where people genuinely and this is probably both for sales when you're selling to customers and also if you're selling into investors. People buy from people and people are buying into you, the founder. And I think that's probably in your founding team, unless you have an extremely technical founding team and you can build like, proprietary IP technology, you need to have somebody in your founding team that can sell the back legs off whatever you're trying to solve. And you do that by hook or by crook, all the magic in the world. Look, as a business, like we're a marketplace, right? I encourage anybody that's doing a marketplace on network effect to read the cold start problem. You'll realize that basically you can't just launch a piece of tech and it works. There's a lot of hand holding to be done. Our go to market was effectively, we're an agency. We'll do a load of manual work for you. We'll make sure it's done by any means necessary, but we'll basically just force it through our technology until people start to adopt the technology. And that's what we've been doing literally for 18 months. We're now at a point now where we've had so much network effect or activity through the platform that, we're not at escape velocity, but we're at a position where as a business, we know that there's a great feedback loop within our technology. So we're launching a self-service product in the next sort of 6 weeks where the consumer can come on, use it themselves, and we know they're going to get good user experience. But we spent 18 months hand-holding everything.
Yeah, thank you. It's really, I find the sales bit really interesting because I think it's the bit that people struggle with the most, actually, either because they're embarrassed of their first product or they just don't feel comfortable selling something perhaps that's theirs rather than selling something they've inherited. In terms of, obviously, on that sort of bootstrap startup budget, were there any particular channels or platforms you used to generate leads that work well for you?
My own gob.
Okay. Great.
Honestly, like this is like, if you cannot, as a founder, get your first 10 customers through your own just grit going out and selling yourself, it sounds horrible. You should probably try a different career path. Somebody in the founding team needs to be able to sell to your first 10 customers. You just have to do it. If you go into a business relying on paid marketing, whether that's pay-per-click, paid social media ads, lead generation stuff, you need to be able to pick up the phone, go to that networking event, go for that coffee, sell your product.
Yeah.
Again, unless you're building some proprietary tech that people will literally be snatching out of your hands, which very few people are, you have to be able to sell what you're building.
Yeah, it's it. And from a marketing point of view, pay-per-click and things like that, if you start to compete on Google with something that's quite a saturated marketplace, you're going to churn through a hell of a lot of money with probably not very much coming back through the other end. So there's definitely not many scenarios where I would ever recommend that as a channel for your go-to-market strategy on a startup budget.
You've got to also remember, right? Every sales call, even when it's a no, is a feedback loop.
Yeah.
Because you're understanding whether you're solving the client's pain points or actually what their real pain points are. It's basically research and development. When you sell to somebody, you understand about their business. What are their pain points? Does your product actually scratch that itch? And if not, how can we solve that itch? Are we aligned with what the market wants right now? And you don't get that through paid media. You do paid media, somebody lands on your website, they sign up, whatever, then they churn. You go and then message them like, oh, hey, sorry to lose you. Can we get some feedback? Once they've churned, and no one's really asked, are they?
Yeah, and you don't know the quality of them. In terms of a marketplace, obviously you had two sides of people you need to bring on the platform. How did you split your time in terms of who to go for, the influencers or the clients? I suppose they are both clients.
So whilst we were building, so we had a long build over like sort of 12 months or so because I was self-funding it and it was as and when we could put money into it. I basically built a pre-registered list of influencers. So I literally in the evenings from when I was working in the daytime, in the evenings I was project managing the build and also just sat on social media messaging influencers saying, got this idea, would you like to join our pre-waiting list? Cool, send me your email address. And just built a pre-registered list.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, and this is the biggest bit of advice that I give to every founder that I speak to, And this goes back to what we were saying about launching a product and not being embarrassed by the first product that you launch. Solve one problem well and then build from that. I went in, the biggest mistake I made in So Squared is I tried to solve multiple problems at once and basically didn't do any of them very well. I could have launched 12 months earlier than when I actually launched because I built a pre registered list of about 2,000 influencers in the UK. I could have started a newsletter. I could have literally, which is, it sounds, well, that's not a tech business or whatever, it's a newsletter. Trust me, newsletters you can build a lot off a newsletter. You start, if I ever started a newsletter about updates in social medias, how to create great content, etc., I could have then gone to brands and said, hey guys, I've got an influencer newsletter with 2,000 influencers with an average open rate of 70% or whatever it is. Do you want to advertise campaigns within this newsletter? I'll charge you 50 quid for a slot. I could have regularly got clients already bought in. Then they would have come to me and said, oh, Sam, your newsletter's great, but we're getting hundreds of emails of influencers wanting to apply. Is there anything you can do for that? Yeah, sure, no worries. Tell you what, we'll build an application thing within the newsletter where they click a link and then they apply, and then it goes into a portal where you can just basically scan everything through. Oh, Sam, this is amazing, but we've still got to go back and email everyone what to do. Okay, we'll build a chat feature, and you build and iterate based on feedback. I built based on what I thought the market wanted, and I think like that is probably like, I know I've gone off on a tangent here in terms
it's
of
really good.
where the original question was, but it's so important for me when speaking to founders and when founders are listening is there's nothing wrong with basically doing something like really small, doing it really well, and then listening to what your customers need next and building on from that.
Yeah.
It's better to do one thing at 100% than do 10 things at 30%.
No, amazing. And actually, I forgot what the question was because I was so interested in listening to what you said, but it was about that marketplace, which one comes on first. And I think it's funny because people feel like newsletters and things like that is old news. This whole thing around AI, ChatGPT, use all the new trending technology. But sometimes the traditional channels of picking up the phone, using the gift of the gab, building a newsletter list, all the traditional stuff, the reasons why they've been around, years and years and will never die out because those things also still work. And I think it's easy for founders, isn't it, to get distracted by new technology and automating things, but actually when you're doing all that, you're not listening. So hopefully that hindsight bit doesn't keep you awake too much at
No,
night.
not
You've
at
obviously
all.
not done anything wrong. Your business is still scaling and doing really successfully.
But we learn from everything that we do.
Yeah.
So I've learned that lesson. So if I was to go into another startup, in a few years' time, I know exactly what I'd do, and I think that's really important. You should fail fast in a startup and not be afraid of failing. But in terms of like building the marketplace, building marketplace is really hard. Like there's no two ways about it. Like building marketplace technology is actually really quite easy. Like just being honest, right? The defendable moat within a marketplace is the network effect, which is actually just getting both sides of supply and demand to interact with each other. We built a pre-registered list of influencers. We started to get them onto the platform. We then had to go and convince brands to come onto it, which is why we have the hand-holding service, basically our own internal agency, to say, hey guys, don't worry, we'll do it all for you. Now we're at a point where we can say, go sign up yourself. Yeah, go do it yourself, because we know that someone will create a campaign and they'll get 50 applicants to it within the first 2 days.
Yeah, I think Ian said it a few times around how you get your first couple of customers, and you said it there. So how you get your first 10, it's a lot of graft and people buy from people. So, all the automation do, pick up the phone, and then eventually you get the network effect to then get to the 100 or the 1,000 or whatever it is you need to do. So it is starting with what you really can do before moving into doing whatever the automation self-service you need to do. And it's something we've always tried to do with looking at MVPs is, do you actually need to build this now? Because what you do for 10 isn't going to be what you do for 100, isn't going to be what you do for 1,000.
For sure. Like literally do the unscalable things first until the wheels fall off. Like first, before we launched So Squared, when we were about to launch our MVP, I won't name the name of it, but we were basically went with a big CRM system, built a load of automated marketing emails, basically spent probably the best part of like $7,500. And for what? Got nothing. Like, why would I not just go and basically pick up the phone and spend $7,500 taking people out for coffees?
Yep.
Yeah.
And people buy from people. If
Yeah.
you have that relationship with someone,
Yeah.
it's so much better than just using
You're right. You're right. No, and there's so much really good stuff in here, and I think so many learnings and words of wisdom. I know you're really generous with your time, Sam, in terms of mentoring other startups. You've talked about some of the things today that you frequently say to founders. I just wondered before we finished off today whether there was anything else that sort of frequently comes up, or things that you find that you're often sharing with founders. We haven't touched on the fundraising journey, and because we've talked very much around building a business and bootstrapping, which is going to be hugely important. But I know that you did have an event recently that sort of flipped the fundraising journey on its head, and you have been through that fundraising journey. So I just wondered if there was anything in particular around that you wanted to share, any words of wisdom.
Yeah, I've said this a lot recently. Not every business is a venture-backed business. There is nothing wrong with owning 90% of a £10 million business. That is a great exit.
Mm-hmm.
Raising venture capital is a really good thing to do, like if that's the route you want to take. But I think over the past sort of like 3 years, entrepreneurship has been glamorized a lot. People kind of go into business expecting to be able to raise money. 2022, fine. There's a lot of liquid cash around, but it's really difficult to raise money. I'm about to raise my third round now, and it is extremely difficult. Especially in the UK, there are some amazing investors, but compared to the US, a lot of UK investors want to see a lot of traction before they actually commit any capital. A lot of people focus way more on raising money than they do on building a business. Build the business, and then people will generally come to you for capital. I think what's really important to understand as well as a founder, if you do want to go down the venture route, is that a venture capital fund is not a charity. Like, they have limited partners that invest in them for them to invest on behalf of them to make a return to their investors. So if we just put that into perspective, if they have £10 million of deployable capital and they invest £1 million check sizes across 10 businesses, right? 8 out of 10 of those startups will fail. And they need to return around 3 times on money invested by their LPs. So the 2 that actually succeed need to do a 15 times multiplier to return the fund that the VC fund needs to return for their LPs. So to put that into perspective, the pressure that's going to be on you as a founder to return that money is incredible. And that's when you have to decide as a founder, do you really want to go down the VC route? Venture capital's great, and I've sat on the other side of the table. Me personally, I'm a venture-backed business, right? But it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to be intellectually honest with yourself and understand whether or not you're growing a great business that you own 90%. You might give some equity away to a co-founder, or you might have a bit away to someone like Startup Factory that can help you build the technology. But realistically, like, you can grow a business. There's a guy from South Africa that I can't remember his name or can't pronounce his name. He says, like, you don't need money to start a business. You need a customer to start a business. And, it's quite simple. Like, people think that they need to raise money to start a business. You don't. You need a customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And without customers, you haven't got a business. I think that's the thing that we always say, business is money in, money out. Where does the money in come from? It has to come from the customers first. So I think, having that customer first mentality is really good. I think you've probably just put loads of people off venture capital. That's why you've just put me off, and I don't have a business. But no, it's really because people don't think about that. They glamorize it, don't they? It is glamour. Fundraising is glamorized, and people think that's the definition of a successful business. And actually, a £10 million business that you own 90% of is absolutely, incredible. So yeah, thank you so much, Sam, for sharing like the beginning of your journey, but also how you built it, and some of those wise words around, failing fast and how to sell and everything. I think there's so much gold in here that, a lot of our founders and early stage startups will find hugely beneficial. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks very much. And as ever, thank you, Nairi. And
Thanks.
to everyone listening, thank you very much. And we'll catch you on the next one.
I think that just about wraps things up here. If you have any thoughts or questions on anything we've said today, get in touch, whether that be through our Twitter @RealTSF or email at hello@Thestartupfactory.tech, or feel free to drop in for a coffee and a chat. As ever, thanks for listening.